G'day everyone, I'm the man called Kemosabe, the man with the plan from the land down under, and this is my video on how Heavy Metal magazine is no longer heavy or metal. If you don't know Heavy Metal magazine, it started in 1977. I started collecting it in 1997, and since inception it has become the vanguard of adult, mature, non-conventional, non-US centric sequential storytelling. It was big and loud and sexy and fun, and sometimes out there and sometimes somber, but it was always challenging conventional storytelling norms. I remember some time ago looking at the submission process to get your work considered for publication in Heavy Metal magazine, and it said that there was a 2-year wait to be published if you were accepted. This magazine in its heyday was so popular, a spot on its roster was so sought after, that even if you were accepted, you'd have to wait at least 2 years before your comic saw print. With the 1981 Heavy Metal movie, the magazine became a cultural phenomenon, as well as a pop culture icon, so much so that years later South Park would parody it. At the helm, instantly recognisable, for 40 years sat one character as the most well-known, their flagship character, Taarna. The mute warrior woman was adapted from Moebius' original art story to the screen in incredible, smooth, rotoscoped art. If you haven't seen Heavy Metal 1981, please go back and check it out. It's full of the sort of stuff that inspires better art, better stories, and is spicy enough to melt most snowflakes. If you ask a normie about Heavy Metal, if they know what you're talking about, it's probably the movie they'll reference, and if it's the movie they reference, it's probably Taarna they remember. To whom and what Heavy Metal is, she matters big time. She is their Batman. She is their Spider-Man. Naturally, any changes to her are going to be met with trepidation by the fans. I'll be honest, I never read the original stories. I only know the animated version, and I don't find her to be a particularly compelling character. She's mute in the cartoon. She communicates with facial expression and action, usually violence. I don't know how deep the lore around her is, or if there is really a lot more to be done with her after that initial story was told. For all I know, there is a multi-decade deepest lore story that's been going on for years, built upon respectfully by multiple creative teams doing their best to honour Moebius' legacy. But knowing current year, probably not. This is Heavy Metal's latest rendition of Taarna. She talks, and she has had a wardrobe change. On the cover it looks okay, in the comic itself it looks pretty average. They call it under-designed or unrealised, but hey, it's not the only one. There are a lot of visual concepts out there that could do with more refining. So when Taarna's new armour was revealed, there was backlash from fans. I didn't see this stuff happen in real time, I just saw the tweet after the fact. And this attitude in this tweet from Heavy Metal magazine's official account is what this video is really about. In response to people complaining about the costume change, the Galaxy Brain running the Heavy Metal Twitter account posted this. It has come to our attention that some of you are confused that Taarna has the ability to change clothes, full stop. So to address this, full stop, new paragraph, we'd like to remind you that you too can change clothes, and to please do so, especially your underwear. We've gotten complaints from the neighbours. I don't think the person who wrote this is necessarily a native English speaker. P.S. Showers between changing is highly encouraged. The person running this account probably thought they were being clever, but this kind of insult was played out a decade ago. Calling fans fat, smelly nerd incels is a losing strategy, as American comics have been finding out the last 5 to 10 years. This post didn't exactly get ratioed, but there was a lot of pushback in the comments. Some people demanded Heavy Metal magazine spend more time delivering overdue comic book orders as opposed to posting insults on Twitter. Others made the claim that the people that Heavy Metal magazine is censoring Taarna for aren't fans and won't buy the books. Heavy Metal magazine doubled down and said their comments weren't aimed at true fans, and true fans will accept the costume change. True fans won't criticise us, is the unsaid message. A lot of people in the comments accused Heavy Metal magazine of going woke and predicted that they would soon go broke. A lot of people cited the fact that Heavy Metal magazine has been declining in quality for many years now, something that I myself can attest to. The drop in quality is the reason I stopped purchasing it after decades of being a loyal customer. This guy, Freaks, posted, making fun of fans, telling them to shower while expecting them to still give you money. You literally didn't need to say any of this, just do your thing and ignore complaints if you want. This is like one of the worst moves any business can make. Heavy Metal responded, said the response has been overwhelmingly positive. The fans who know us know they are not the ones being addressed. The people who love and support Heavy Metal know they aren't the problem. But there are people who are, and the first step in solving the problem is addressing it. So this is exactly what I'm talking about. The fans who think the way we want them to think are not the ones being addressed. People who like our product, who don't think in lockstep, are the ones that we are insulting. The people who love and support Heavy Metal know they aren't the problem. They're calling fans problems. They're saying, if you like and support us, if you like our content, if you support us and you buy our magazine, if you've been a fan for 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, there's people who probably have an entire run of Heavy Metal magazine, 40 plus years of Heavy Metal magazine. You guys are the problems because you don't want Taarna to change. I posted, if you think Taarna should have kept her iconic costume of 40 plus years, you have poor personal hygiene is a hell of a take, guys. You used to be cutting edge, pushing the envelope of sequential art and storytelling. literally expanding minds. Now I don't even recognize you. They responded with, you probably haven't been keeping up then. It's still heavy metal, keeping the same old format, wouldn't be pushing the envelope. Again, shocking grammar and punctuation. I really don't think this person speaks English as a first language. If you read the story, you know she doesn't lose her look. She just puts on armor in preparation for the final battle. As a writer, you should understand. So now they're attacking my credentials as a writer. The fact that you don't understand that means that you must not be a very good writer. I mean, this is in my bio. It says that I'm an editor and a writer for hire. So here they are attacking my credibility. You disagree with us, so therefore everything that you produce must not be of very good quality. Yeah, it's sort of like none of this needs to be said. It's all very backhanded. It's all very insulting. I'd wager money I was buying this magazine before the person running this account was even born. I replied, I'm not talking about the costume change. I'm talking about attacking fans. What's wrong with just saying, have a little faith in us, read the story? Which I think is eminently reasonable. Whenever anybody said, hey, I don't like this costume change, they could have easily said, look, it's just for one issue. She's getting a level up. She's getting better gear to protect her. I mean, her original costume, if you've seen it, it is essentially a glorified bikini. She's getting improved armor to handle the increasing threat level that she's facing. That would have been really reasonable. They could have said, like I've posted, have a little faith in us, read the story. We're sure that you'll enjoy it. You'll recognize Taarna as Taarna. It's not an issue. We're not trying to change things on you. Heavy Metal Magazine right now is acting like they're under attack. What they've got to realize is their change to Taarna isn't happening in a vacuum. There's changes to every significant fictional pop culture character and icon. There's been changes. They've been attacked. They're being attacked at the base. They're being attacked at the core. They're being race swapped. They're being gender swapped. I was only saying to my dad the other day, at a time when the Avengers were in the cinema, and there's 15 years ago, most people didn't know who the Avengers were. 15 years ago, most people didn't know who Captain America or Iron Man was. Yeah, they knew who Hulk was because of Lou Ferrigno and Bill Bixby, but most of the nobody had heard of Hawkeye. None of the normies had heard of Hawkeye or Black Widow. They didn't know those characters. Now they're worldwide, internationally known. At the time when the Avengers were being introduced to a world hungry for more of their adventures, you go into the comic book store, Captain America was dead, replaced with Falcon. Iron Man was dead, replaced with Riri Williams. Hulk was replaced with, what's his name, the Korean kid. Hawkeye had to give his name away to Kate Bishop, who somehow was a better archer than him. Thor had been replaced with Jane Foster. So you've got a half a dozen of Marvel's tentpole characters have all been killed off, changed, subverted to promote this subversive agenda. People are sick of it. There's a guy on here that says, people on the right side of the political spectrum accuse everybody else of being delicate snowflakes, but they're the ones who get triggered when something as simple as a costume change happens. It's not one costume change. People aren't being triggered over the fact that Taarna's got more armor on. They're getting triggered over the fact, nobody gets triggered, they're getting triggered over the fact that she's had the same outfit for 40 years. She's instantly recognizable in that outfit, and now that outfit's been changed on the tail end of every other significant character being changed. This is just one in a long line of many. This is the straw that broke the camel's back for many, many fans. Many fans seeing so much stuff being subverted, seeing the quality of Heavy Metal Magazine decline so rapidly, so quickly, to see the sort of sexy, edgy, violent, pushing the envelope type storytelling being replaced with, you go to the Instagram, have a look at the bland content on there. It looks like a whole bunch of image comics. It's just these bland fields of color with vague shapes and whirling galaxies. And the only good stuff on their Instagram page, the only good stuff that's still cutting edge, is still pushing the envelope, is stuff from back in the 70s and 80s when you had like Louis Royo and Simon Bisley working on the covers. All the stuff they're doing now, all the modern stuff, is very, very flat, very boring. Testament to the fact is that if the cover for the Taarna comic didn't have Taarna as the header, as the title, you wouldn't recognize her from any other white-haired warrior woman. Like, she just looks like any other generic warrior woman. And that's the thing about Taarna, being mute, being someone who doesn't talk, who speaks with her actions. Her costume and her hair and a weapon are the most recognizable things about her. When you change those things, she's no longer able to be recognized. She just looks like any other white-haired warrior woman. She looks like Ciri out of The Witcher. She looks like Lady Death with a tan. So not only are Heavy Metal changing the look of this character and alienating fans, they're also reducing her visibility, her recognizability, and reducing her ability to sell comics as a character. She's less sexy, she's less recognizable without that name. And how many people really know Taarna's name? If you said, Heavy Metal, Heavy Metal Magazine. I don't know Heavy Metal Magazine. That cartoon back in the 80s, and the chick with the red bikini and the sword, and she's on the pterodactyl. Oh, yeah, I saw that. What's the character's name? Oh, I don't know. So having her name up the top isn't enough to get you to pick up the comic. A lot of normies will see that and say, well, it's just another white-haired chick in armor with a sword. Her name's Taarna. Okay, whatever. But if they recognize that costume that's been consistent for 40 years, that's the girl out of the Heavy Metal cartoon. I remember that movie. I really like that movie. I might pick that up. They're alienating potential customers for customers aren't going to buy their book. They're kowtowing to the SJWs, they're kowtowing to the censorious mob. The sales aren't going to go up. I mean, these guys are following the exact pattern that American comics have been following for the last decade, and it's resulted in Demon Slayer outselling the entire industry. And now somehow heavy metal thinks they're going to navigate these waters using exactly the same mat and have a different result. And it's not going to have a different result. Zach's got a theory. It's not get woke, go broke. It's go broke, get woke. He had a theory in one of his videos, and the longer I see this trajectory, the more I think he's right. These companies start to wane. Their popularity starts to wane. Their profits start to wane. They're not as viable as they once were. There's a variety of reasons for that. Part of it with Heavy Metal Magazine, I think, is that with the internet, the sort of mind-blowing stuff that you would see in Heavy Metal Magazine, you can now find on DeviantArt for nothing. You don't have to pay for it. And the fact that, if you don't want to pay $15 to $20 for an issue, for 120 pages on the off chance that one story is actually good, which became the norm for Heavy Metal Magazine maybe 2 decades ago, you can probably download a digital copy for nothing, have a flick through it and see if you want to buy it or not. Once you know that you don't want to buy it, you don't pick up that magazine, they lose the sale. Again, another argument for meritocracy. If you put out the best magazine you can, month after month, people are going to buy it. But try to appeal to too many people, try to diversify the sort of stories that are in there too much. It's a crapshoot, scattershot. And a reader's going to come along and say, look, you got 10 stories in this issue, 9 of them bore me, one of them's kind of interesting, it's not worth my $20. Just like Wizard Magazine, with the advent of the internet, people didn't need Heavy Metal Magazine as much as they needed to. Once the internet was a really common thing, and all the information that you get from Wizard Magazine once a month could be found daily on comic news sites, Wizard Magazine went out of business. Same thing with Heavy Metal. You don't need them to find the sort of cutting-edge, mind-expanding art that you used to pick up. Most of the snowflakes would find the stuff in Heavy Metal Magazine incredibly triggering from back in the day. If they picked up an issue from the 80s or the 90s, I remember the first issue I bought in 1997, had a story set in a post-apocalyptic desert world, and the female protagonist, because it's a water shortage because it's a desert world, the female protagonist would travel the lands, going to settlements and giving guys group blowjobs to sustain herself on the moisture from their semen. She would go around and she'd blow 10, 20 guys in a row, and she can consume the semen, and that would give her enough moisture to survive in this desert world. I mean, that's the sort of thing that would be in an old Heavy Metal magazine. I mean, that's pretty edgy. I can't imagine that the sort of people who've got the pronouns in their bio on Twitter are going to pick up a magazine like that, read it, and think that's okay. They'd love it because they've got something more to complain about. These people love complaining about stuff. They love being upset. They love being triggered. They love being able to point to something and say, this is problematic. So how did what was potentially the edgiest magazine in all of Western comicdom get so infested with SJWs? I don't understand how this happens time and time again. How do they get in there? How do they rise to powers of position, and what's their goal? How are they all hive mind bug people that have the same goal? They all seem to have the same goal. They want to homogenize everything. They want to make it as bland, inoffensive, boring, just as flat scan as possible. Just as complete, flat, featureless. I'm sure these sort of people that love going to an art gallery and seeing these massive canvases of just all grey paint, nothing but just a block of grey or a block of black or a block of other colours are probably trigger. I mean, probably can't go into too extreme a hue, but just fields of colour and there's nothing on it, because that can't possibly offend anybody. So that's the sort of art that's going to be allowed. We're getting into equilibrium territory here, where anything that's offensive is either going to be homogenized and become as bland and inoffensive as possible, or it's going to be burned at the stake. Some people say the education systems are to blame because individuals go in and conformist thinkers come out the other side. They all come out programmed, pre-programmed, ready to accept whatever the narrative of the day. I mean, you've seen these guys turn on a dime. 1 minute they say X is X, and then as soon as they get their programming from Glorious Leader, they'll turn around and say, well, no, X is Y. They completely just change course on a dime, or do a 180 on any important issue as long as it suits their narrative. What's the end game? Why do they want to... How do they find these industries? Stuff like Warhammer 40k, stuff like Heavy Metal Magazine, stuff like the American comic book industry, stuff like Magic the Gathering, D&D. D&D has taken such a beating. I don't know if D&D will ever recover. The amount of woke garbage that they've forced into there, the amount of real-life political, sociological, ideological issues that they've crammed into what should be fantasy escapism, I don't know if D&D is ever going to recover from that. It's going to take a whole new creative team. It's going to take like a 6th edition where they just cut all the flotsam and just start fresh and get rid of all the garbage that's holding them back, all the garbage that's alienating. Again, fans 30, 40 years have been playing D&D and now being told this is not for you. You're not inclusive enough. There was nothing more inclusive than D&D. It was the most accessible. Anybody could come along and be anything. There's no limits. It was so enabling. It was the most enabling thing ever. And now We're getting modules with maps for dungeons with wheelchair access. It's just another way for them to regulate what you're allowed to think, the opinions you're allowed to have. Heavy Metal Magazine says if you don't think the way they think, you're not a true fan. We see this reinforced on their Instagram, where, again, they posted the same thing about you have the ability to change clothes and you're a stinky incel. Steve Becker says the changes suck, respect your fans. Heavy Metal Magazine says back to Steve looks like the sort of dude that's probably been collecting as long as I have. He looks like a dude. He looks like a real dude. They say, no, we don't want fans like that. We are good. Thank you. Furthermore, they say it sounds like you had trouble reading and comprehending there, champ. Let's try this. We grew up. Sorry, you will get there one day. I mean, this isn't passive-aggressive insulting bullshit, but it shows their mindset. They think, heavy metal thinks they've grown. They think they've gotten better. They think the way they were is embarrassing. They think the way they were is problematic. It shouldn't have existed. It shouldn't be allowed to be referenced. So they've got to take everything that did exist and they've got to change it. They've got to homogenize it. They've got to make it bland. Because it's too embarrassing for them to have this shameful artwork existing in their history and in their past. For two reasons. One, because there's some sort of culpability, like we are somehow responsible for this thing happening. Again, I don't think the person running the heavy metal social media accounts is even alive when the magazine started, let alone when I started collecting it. But if it exists, people can always point back to it and look and say how much better you guys were. Look at this stuff from back in 1977, 1987, 1997. Look how much better that stuff was than what you're doing now. It's a bit like Image Comics. Image Comics doesn't want to admit that they ever had Youngblood and Wildcats and stuff like that. They don't want to talk about it now. Now they want this stuff like this, what was Zach reviewing the other day, that border, the one about the illegal immigrants and all that sort of thing. Like, it's all about political issues now. All their stuff's non-binary coffee shop dwellers talking about ideological issues. It's not superheroes anymore. Even stuff like Invincible and Walking Dead no longer have a home at Image. They ran out. Their stories were told. They don't feel like they have a place there anymore. I'm theorising that heavy metal's seen the decline in... It's funny, they're doubling down. They've seen a decline in the quality of the stories that they're submitting, the quality of the artwork, the content that they publish. That quality has declined as the SJWs have got on board. The SJWs have said, no, we don't want Louis Royo and Simon Bisley. We don't want sexy titty art. We don't want anything cool. We don't want anything edgy, anything that pushes the envelope, anything psychedelic, anything that makes you really think. We just want bland ideological crap. As they accept more and more of that, comic people are no longer buying it. Same thing happened to myself. The quality wasn't there anymore, so I decided to stop buying the issue. I could spend my money better elsewhere. So they're publishing stuff for the woke crowd, but the woke crowd, they don't have any money. They don't have jobs. They're not buying this stuff. And the real fans, the people who are the real fans, who've been fans for 40, 30 years, they've left. They're probably not coming back. Even a 180 at this point is not going to bring those people back. Certainly not going to bring me back. So now Heavy Metal Magazine is stuck with the same sort of soy-loving Portland hipsters that are working on the magazine. They can't even sell to themselves. But because that's all they've got left, because it's too shameful, too triggering, and too problematic to turn around and invite someone like Milo Manara or Louis Royo to submit a story again, the only thing they have is woke ideological crap to sell to people like themselves, so they've got to double down on it. They can't be allowed to be seen to be compared to the stuff in the past because the stuff in the past was successful. They've got to erase that history. They've got to make it so that, hey, we grew up. We're shedding our childish ways. We're now more mature, more adult, more grown up, just like Image Comics has done. And just like Image Comics have done, we're seeing a decline in sales, a heavy decline, to the point where they're going broke, desperate to hold on to whatever people they still have, whatever quote-unquote fans they still have. They're now going full woke, trying to lean right into that left side of things, trying to hope that those people are going to adhere to the magazine and help buoy sales. It just doesn't happen. These people don't buy books. You'll have people, I guarantee there's people in the comments of this saying, supporting what heavy metal says, and there's a bunch of them. There's a dozen of them coming in saying, oh, the fat incels are angry that we're not showing titties anymore. They're just all a bunch of horny incels. They can't get laid. They only read old heavy metal magazines for the tits, and the world's a better place now that heavy metal magazines gone woke. I bet none of these people have a single heavy metal comic in their collection. They haven't bought Heavy Metal Magazine in their life. They might have a few downloaded on their hard drive, but I doubt they've ever paid money for it. Heavy Metal Magazine's following the same trajectory as American comic books. They either can't or don't want to see the failures of their predecessors. Somehow they think they can do everything the same that Marvel Comics did over the last 10 years and have a different result. This is the first time I've heard anybody talking about Heavy Metal Magazine in probably 10 years. Maybe they're trying to farm this controversy for a little bit of clout, a little bit of social awareness. People be aware. Hey, they still published Heavy Metal Magazine, did they? Haven't bought one of those in 10, 20 years. Go back, pick up an issue. Now I know why I haven't bought one in 10 to 20 years. You can't do this scattershot approach where you're trying to please everybody. By going woke, they've alienated the hardcore fans that have been collecting the book for decades. By going woke, they're only appealing to the lefty side of the political spectrum, but these people don't buy things. They don't buy comics. They don't collect comics. Not the way that hardcore completionists do. Not in the way that allows Heavy Metal Magazine to continue to be significantly profitable. They say that the Taarna's sold out. Somebody else pointed out, knowing the way that comic book stores work, being bought by the stores, but it's not necessarily going to be bought by the people on the ground, the customers. He says he looks forward to going into the comic book store in a couple of months' time and seeing stacks of Taarna magazines sitting there unsold, and then going back another couple of months later and seeing it in the quarter bin. If you're going to pick one group of fans to pander to, one group of fans to please, one group of fans to make content for, make sure it's the sort of fans that actually have money, that actually buy things. Heavy Metal Magazine might have taken a hit with the advent of the internet, but by staying true to their roots, they would have at least retained some portion of the people that have been fans for a long time. By going woke, they've alienated all those people, and they're desperately clawing for this younger, woker generation of alleged fans, and fans that are supposed to exist. But these are the same people that send comic books broke by downloading from the internet every month instead of actually buying issues. These are not the sort of people you want to chase. On top of that, they're insulting what little fans they do have left, what little completionists are still hanging in there. When Heavy Metal Magazine insults its fans, when they create a delineation that says true fans think the way we think, and anybody who doesn't think the way we think, we don't want them buying our product, they're telling you they don't want your money. So why don't you give them exactly what they want? Why don't you give them none of your money? Because nothing in this exchange between them and myself and them and other fans has inspired me to give them any of mine.